Hey everyone, it's Maria, and today I'm going to be talking about 3 different books that I read this month that kind of wove together in my brain, and they were such great books and asked so many great questions, and I wrote down so many things that I had to do a video, but I wanted to connect them because for me, part of the reading experience is it's like a workout routine. You're not going to do a video about just push-ups and how push-ups changed your life. And you're not going to do a video about squats. And well, you might, but your best bet is to talk about how all of the things that you did together formed into this epic experience, this great exercise routine that really rounded itself out. And so for me, this month, I read so many great books, and some of them I'll do in different videos, but this particular trio really wove in and out of my brain, especially since I kind of read them simultaneously. So without any further ado, the books were Such a Fun Age by Kiley, Reid. That one's getting a lot of play on YouTube, so I'm not even really going to talk too much about it except how it interweaves. The Sun Does Shine by Anthony Ray Hinton, which was another phenomenal book that a lot of people have heard about. And then this one, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community by Martin Luther King Jr. This one I've not seen anybody talk about, even though I'm sure most people have heard of this author as opposed to the other two. So that said, I'm going to use this kind of as my spine and my jumping off point as I will talk. For those of you who don't know, Such a Fun Age is a fiction novel. I listened to an audio. Like I said, it's by Kiley, Reid, and it is about kind of 2 women. It's told from different perspectives. There's Amira Tucker, who is a Black 20-something. She's a nanny, or she's a very full-time babysitter who wants to kind of figure out her life, and she's in that 20-something space where she's trying to figure out what to do next and kind of is stuck. Her friends all seem to have like their stuff figured out, and she doesn't. Then there is Alix Chamberlain, who is a wealthy white woman who has 2 small children, a 3-year-old and like a maybe less than 1-year-old. She's married, lives in a nice house, and she hires Amira to be her babysitter. Meanwhile, things kind of come to a head at the very beginning, first chapter, where Amira gets accused of kidnapping their 3-year-old because she has her out late at a grocery store and she's Black and the 3-year-old is white. And there's kind of this incident, and that is the jumping off point for the book. Now, throughout the book, it goes back and forth between the 2 perspectives. If you don't mind books with cringeworthy characters, this is a book for you, because there were several times in this book where different people would say things, and the narrator did a great job on the audio, and I would just like, ooh, I can't believe they just said that. Or, ooh, you could tell that what the one character was saying they meant as a good thing, but it was just because you knew the thoughts of the other person, you knew it was going to be awful, and you knew how it was going to be taken. And I just think there were so many moments like that for me, which will come in later the video. Okay, so there's also, so the 3rd book, The Sun Does Shine by Anthony Ray Hinton, is a nonfiction book about a man who was on death row for over 30 years. I don't remember exactly how many, maybe 35 years, for a crime he did not commit in the state of Alabama. He had an alibi. He was at his work. He was checked in. It was the weapon that was found at his mom's house hadn't been fired in years and years. So much evidence that pointed to, no, he was definitely innocent, but because of the state of Alabama and the experts and the lack of money really that he had for legal defense, he ended up on death row. And eventually, Brian Stevenson, who is, a lawyer a lot of us know about, he is also the one from Just Mercy, got him out. That's the short synopsis. But he has a very positive outlook throughout the book, trying to figure out how to survive, really, in such a horrible place and situation. And those kinds of things tied in, because obviously there's some talk about racist attitudes and the societal value of a Black man in that book as well. Now, that said, obviously Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., this is the 2nd book of his that I've read. I'd read a lot of his speeches, letters before, but I thought this year would be a great year to read some of his books. So I've already read Strength to Love. This is the second one I read of his. Where do we go from here? Chaos or Community? It is a library book. I will eventually get my own copy because there were several quotes that I was going to underline and I just had to copy off somewhere else. The first thing that I want to talk about is this quote. No great victories are won in a war for transformation of a whole people without total participation. I think a lot of times we feel like we want the world to change and get better, but we're not willing to all participate in that. We're waiting for somebody else to do the legwork. And this book, I mean, he could have written this book this year. There were so many things that were said in here that it was just so time appropriate for what we're going through right now. Which I don't know if it's encouraging or discouraging that things haven't really changed since, or if it just means that things are going to be this way until there's a lot more change and work done. I don't know. Take it as you will. The second part of this book that I wanted to underline was the idea of how many times America and American history has just passed over the Black community, whether they're talking about international culture. He brings up the idea of he went to a play that his daughter was in, and they were talking about all these different parts of America, and they had different people singing different languages, and he was just waiting for them to end with like a really great spiritual or something like that, and nothing. It was just silence. And I feel like, especially in February, Black History Month, it's been getting a little bit more play, but it is something that we need to be talking about throughout the whole year. There's so many amazing inventors, and he even talks about that, how people will bring up things like George Washington Carver, but they won't bring up some of Alice Ball or other inventors, thinkers, engineers, writers, artists. They just might get like the top 5 as opposed to like this. There's so many. And it's just been really fun to kind of find more of the obscure people in history that we haven't heard about as much. Token white liberalism is brought up in this book, and this is one of the times where all of my reading kind of culminated into one like, ooh. So he talks about how for us all to move past racist America, it means everybody getting involved. It means Black people getting involved. It means white people getting involved. He talks about how there is strength in having white liberals working for racial equality. However, he also talks about how one of the biggest problems with white liberals is the idea of tokenism and just and since I'm a white liberal, I can totally own this. The idea of wanting to say, look how far we've come, look how well we're doing, though we elected a Black president, or we have this many Black people serving on this particular organization, instead of just being able to say, like, we have a lot of work still left to do, so we're not having to count how many people are being represented in our local community. So I've been doing a lot more with local politics the last year and a half, and there is a man that I really value his opinion. He's doing some great work for our local community, this side of town, and I've been so appreciative of him. He's a Black man. He started up a concerned citizens group, and I've gone to a couple of those meetings. I've talked with him individually, and I was really, really excited to work with him because I don't know as much about this side of the community that I should. I don't have as many Black friends in the community as I should. And part of that's just because of how I'm situated, and part of that is just not knowing how to do that. I don't even know. I'm working on it. It's one of the things that me as a white liberal, I'm trying. But so I appreciate him. There's a point to this, I promise. So another group popped up on Facebook for a local community citizens group. And I thought it was the local government putting on this like meeting, let's talk about stuff. So one of my friends went to the meeting so I could watch all of our kids, because that's what was going to work if one of us went and represented the two of us. And she said it was run by this white lady who had showed up at my friend Dominic's meeting before and had said a lot of things about we need to change. She does a lot of talking, not a lot of listening. And it was just one of those, like, oh, come on. You just have to step aside sometimes. I don't know. And so there is a lot of that in this. In the Such a Fun Age book, there are several comments made by Alix about being an empowered Black woman and how she wants to make sure that she talked about their Thanksgiving dinner and how many Black people are going to be attending her Thanksgiving dinner and how it made her feel like, oh, this is gonna look so good on Instagram and those kinds of things. And I feel like, yes, that is still where a lot of us liberals are. I listened to a news story where they're talking about how white liberal women are some of the least willing to change, or at least willing to learn. Like they're not going to ask the stupid questions about a race or justice, because supposedly they're expected to already have the answers and done their research. And again, I don't know all the time when to ask the questions, when to keep my mouth shut, who to ask the questions of. Those are relationships you kind of have to be careful with. But it's important to be cognizant of the fact that we're going to screw up and we're going to have to apologize because we mess up. Anyway, so that's part of the whole that I was just like, ooh, that really flows into the book. Another thing he talks about in here is education without social action is a one-sided value because it has no true power potential. Again, this made me think of the other books that I was reading, because it talks about in The Sun Does Shine with Anthony Ray Hinton, he talks about starting a book club for the other inmates on death row and how education had the power to free them from their shackles. And if they were able to talk and think, they had something else to focus on other than death. But without that, they couldn't unlock the pure power potential because they didn't have the ability for social action until they started using these things to work together, to build up their community, to do the legal law research, and to communicate and try and build each other up that way. I thought that was such a neat comparison between the two. Another thing that he says in here is the world is a widely separated. He talks about an author who they'd found his notes after he died about writing a story about a widely separated family who inherits this big house and they have to figure out how to live in it together. And that is exactly the situation we are in America, in the world, where we're all, whether we like it or not, everything is so interconnected with trade, with economies, with climate change. Everything is so interconnected that if we don't treat one another like family members that we value, it's going to get really ugly really fast. In The Sun Does Shine, Anthony Ray Hinton is in, his 5x7 cell, and for a long time it's very quiet, and as he starts asking questions of people near him, they start learning more and more about each other. At one point, one of the gentlemen's, he had gotten word that his dad had passed. And so he was very angry and upset, and everybody on the row asked questions and talked him through it. And they became a family together, because even though he ends up talking about how his best, not Martin Luther King Jr., Anthony Ray Hinton talks about how his best friend on death row was a former KKK member. Those kinds of things where you're joining to survive something hard and awful. Those are the things that bind you together more so than previous prejudices or things that you learned growing up. Those are the things that we can grow into a bonded family over. Another thing he talked about in this book is the Rip Van Winkle story written by Washington Irving, where the man goes to sleep for 20 years. And he says that there's a small detail where when he goes up to sleep, there's a King George picture on the bar sign, and then when he wakes up, it's George Washington. He just thinks it's a different guy. He doesn't realize a whole revolution has happened while he was asleep. And he talks about how it's so important that he said people fail to remain awake during the greatest periods of social change. And I think that's one of the things that I try and read more and learn more, because I don't want to be the one who's asleep. And they talk about the whole woke movement and whatever else. The things that I worry about are the history times where people, slept through Hitler's rise and didn't say a word until it was too late. And I think those are the revolutions I don't want to sleep through, the ones that are scary and very hateful revolutions. I'd like to be awake to start more of a revolution of love. So anyway, I don't know. I hope this all came together to tell you that those are 3 books you really should read. Where Do We Go From Here by Martin Luther King Jr. Excellent book. It's not that long. Such a Fun Age by Kiley, Reid. It was a great listen on audio. It asked so many questions of me about, when was I cringeworthy? When did I say things that were just so off the mark? When did I, think of myself as better or enough to, when did I feel like I had the permission to intervene on somebody's life without their permission? Those kinds of questions. And then the Sun Does Shine. That book was another one for me that just was really hit home. There's one part in there where he will read all 53 names of the men that were put to death while he was on the row. And just listening to those names and realizing that they had their stories, they had their ups and downs, that none of us are perfect, that we're all guilty and we're all innocent, and it doesn't even matter. It was just such a beautifully told story. I highly recommend it. It's worthy of all the stars and buzz. So those are 5 5-star reads. 3 5-star reads that really, for me, wove together my February, and I wanted to make sure that you heard about all 3 of them. So in the comments below, let me know what you think about any of these. Did my thoughts even make sense? I don't even know. I really, really appreciated my reading month in February. So I'll talk to you all later. Bye.